I loved him with all my heart. We planned our future. He was the one. But after my mother died, she left behind a letter that told me he was my brother. I never believed in soulmates until I met Daniel. He wasn't the loudest in the room or the flashiest, but when he looked at me, it felt like he saw through every version of myself I had ever hidden. There was something gentle about him, something steady, the kind of man you trust before you understand why. We met at a bookstore, cliché maybe, but real. I had reached for the last worn copy of The Bell Jar, and he let go of it with a soft laugh. "You win," he said, "but only if you promise to actually read it." That was 3 years ago. Since then, he had become my home, my warmth, my future. My mother, however, had always remained strangely quiet about Daniel. She never asked too much, never offered advice, never smiled when I showed her our photos. At first, I thought she was just being protective. But now I think she was afraid. I was raised by her alone. No father, no siblings, no bedtime stories about happy families. Just her quiet strength and long hours at work. She once told me, "Some stories are better left in silence." I didn't understand what she meant until the day she died. Her funeral was small, simple. She would have liked that. After everyone had left, I returned to her apartment to pack her things. Her favorite sweater still smelled like her. Her reading glasses were still on the nightstand. It felt wrong to touch anything, but I had to. In her closet, tucked deep inside a weathered shoebox, I found it, a letter, my name on the front, in her handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. I didn't know it yet, but this letter would ruin everything I thought I knew. I unfolded the letter slowly. The paper was aged, delicate, like it had been written years ago and kept hidden all this time. My name was written with care. Anna, just as she used to sign birthday cards. That small touch alone made my throat tighten. The first few lines were full of love. She said she was proud of the woman I had become, that raising me was the only thing in her life she never regretted. But the warmth of her words was only a prelude. I could feel it, like standing at the edge of a cliff before the fall. Then the words changed. "I've hidden something from you, something I should have told you long ago, but I was afraid it would destroy you, destroy us." My hands froze. His name is Daniel, and he's not just someone you love. He's your half-brother. The breath left my body like a punch to the lungs. She wrote about a man from her past, a brief but painful relationship that ended before I was born. She thought she would never see him again. Years later, she found out he had a son with another woman. That boy was Daniel. But she never connected the dots until she saw us together. She said she recognized his smile immediately, the way he stood, the curve of his jaw. It was his father all over again. My father. Still, she said nothing. I didn't want to ruin your happiness, but I couldn't die with this secret locked inside me. I sat in silence for what felt like forever. The letter slipped from my fingers, landing softly on the floor. The world around me blurred. The room, the sounds, even the memories. All I could hear was the echo of her words. "He's your brother." It didn't feel real. I wanted to believe it was a cruel mistake, a lie, anything but the truth. I opened my phone, scrolled through photos of Daniel, our beach trip, our first Christmas, the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. How could something that felt so right be so wrong? I didn't cry. Not yet. The tears would come later when I tried to fall asleep that night and found nothing but silence waiting for me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the letter folded beside me like a silent scream. The room felt colder than usual. I didn't turn on the heater. I didn't even pull the blanket over myself. I just stayed still. Thoughts swirled in my head, fast, messy, impossible to pin down. How could my mother have lived with this secret for so long? How could I have kissed him, loved him, planned a future with him without ever knowing? The next morning, I avoided looking in the mirror. I didn't want to see the face of a girl who had unknowingly crossed a line she could never uncross. I knew I had to tell Daniel, but how? What words could carry the weight of this truth? Hey, the woman who raised me just died and left me a letter. Turns out you're my brother. No, there was no way to soften it, no way to make it less than what it was. Devastating. I held the letter in my hands for hours before finally placing it in an envelope. I didn't add a note, didn't write, "Read this," didn't say anything at all. I drove to his apartment in silence. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. When he opened the door, he smiled, like he always did, that same smile that made me fall in love with him. It was the last time I could let myself see it that way. "I need you to read something," I said, placing the envelope in his hands. He looked confused, but nodded. "Is everything okay?" I didn't answer. I just walked away. That night, he didn't call. The next day, nothing. The third day, still nothing. I both feared and hoped that maybe he hadn't read it, that maybe he had just set it down and forgotten. But I knew better. Daniel wasn't the kind of person who ignored things. He faced them, always. On the fourth day, he showed up at my door. He didn't say hi. He didn't hug me. He just looked at me with the saddest eyes I had ever seen and whispered, "I wish I didn't know, but I'm glad I do." We sat on the floor of my apartment for hours without speaking. No music, no TV, no excuses. There was nothing left to say. And yet, everything had changed. We didn't see each other for weeks. After that night, the night of no words, only pain, I think we both needed distance. I didn't blame him. I didn't even blame my mother. There was no one left to blame. Only a life left in ruins to pick through. I tried to move on in the ways people do. I went to work. I called friends I hadn't seen in months. I smiled when they asked if I was okay. And every night, when I came home to the silence, I pretended it was enough. But it wasn't. Everything reminded me of him. The smell of cinnamon when I passed our favorite bakery, the crooked bench in the park where we first kissed, even the dumb little cactus on my windowsill. He gave it to me because I kept killing normal plants. I thought grief was something you felt when someone died. But this was different. This was mourning someone who was still alive. Someone I still loved but could never hold again. One night, I got drunk, alone. I poured myself a glass of wine, then another, then another. I played the playlist he made me on my birthday, the one with the bad 80s songs I secretly loved, and I cried. Hard. I don't even remember picking up the phone. All I know is when I woke up the next morning, my face was crusted with tears, and my phone said, "Call ended 014712." I had called Daniel, and he had stayed on the line for almost 2 hours, not saying a word. I told myself I wouldn't reach out again. That night had been my moment of weakness. But deep down, I think I knew it wasn't over. A week later, he texts me, "Meet me at the bench." The bench. Our bench. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. When I finally arrived, he was already there, hands in his coat pockets, head down. He didn't look at me right away. He didn't need to. "I don't know how to stop loving you," he said quietly. "I've tried. God knows I've tried." Tears welled up in my eyes again. Not because of what he said, but because I felt the same. "I still think of you," I whispered. "Every day." We didn't touch. We didn't even sit close. But that moment, honest, broken, tender, felt more intimate than anything we'd ever shared before. The days after that were confusing. We didn't decide anything that day. We didn't say we'd try to be together. We didn't promise to stay away. We just existed, knowing. For the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. It wasn't peaceful, but it was real. Daniel and I started talking again, not like before, flirty, casual, full of hope. Now it was cautious, quiet, but still tender. He'd text me a photo of a sunset and write, "Thought you'd like this." I'd reply with a voice memo of rain falling outside my window. We never said, "I miss you." But we did. In every unspoken word. I told myself this could be enough, that maybe we could keep this fragile thread between us alive without crossing any lines. But lines blur. Feelings don't listen to logic. One evening he came over, just for tea. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, like two magnets turned the wrong way. Close, but unable to touch. We talked about stupid things, a show he'd been watching, a recipe I ruined. And then silence. The kind of silence that feels like gravity. He looked at me, and I looked back. I didn't move. He didn't either. But the air between us was charged, dangerous, like the moment before a storm. "I can't be just your friend," he said. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words never came, because deep down, I knew. I couldn't either. So we stopped talking again. This time, not because we were hurt, but because we didn't trust ourselves to do the right thing. Love isn't always clean. It doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always stay in the lines it's supposed to. I wish I could say that we found a way to stay in each other's lives, that we became something new, stronger, better, safer. But we didn't. We drifted. Because that's what people do when the truth is too heavy to carry together. I started seeing a therapist. At first, I didn't even know what to say. How do you explain loving someone you were never supposed to love? How do you explain the way it hollowed you out, then filled you back up with grief? But she didn't judge me. She just listened. And slowly, I unraveled. I told her everything. The way Daniel made me laugh when I forgot how. The way my mother's handwriting still made my hands shake. The way I still dreamed about him. Soft, impossible dreams where none of this had happened. She said something I'll never forget. Love doesn't always come to teach you how to keep it. Sometimes it comes to teach you how to let it go. I cried that day. The kind of cry that leaves your ribs sore the next morning. But afterward, I felt lighter. Not healed, not whole, but lighter. I stopped texting Daniel. I didn't block him. I didn't delete our pictures. I just stopped. It wasn't a decision I made one morning with coffee. It was slow, adrift. Like a boat pulling from the dock, not knowing where it's headed, only that it can't stay. Sometimes he'd still send things. A song, a photo of the sky, a message that just said, "Thinking of you." And I wouldn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I knew if I did, we'd both start sinking again. I found new routines. I went back to yoga. I bought myself sunflowers on Sundays. I finally framed that picture of me and my dad from when I was 5, the only photo I had where I looked truly at peace. And slowly, I reclaimed my life. Not the life I wanted, not the one I thought I'd have, but mine.